The moment she stepped into the room, every head turned, not to greet her, but to assess her. And then came the voice, cold, flat, sharp as broken glass. She'll get nothing. Dad hated her. No hello, no eye contact. Just that cutting sentence, launched like a dagger across the room for everyone to hear. It came from Sophia, her older sister, who sat at the head of the table in a charcoal gray pantsuit, back straight like a judge ready to sentence a criminal, her red lipstick sharp enough to wound, her voice even sharper. At that moment, 43-year-old Elena Clark realized exactly what kind of battle she had walked into. She wasn't welcome. She wasn't family. She was a ghost they didn't expect to see, and now that she had appeared, they wanted her erased again. Beside her, Liam, her 10-year-old son, flinched. She felt it in his fingers, small and warm inside hers, curling tighter like he could sense the tension in the air. She forced a smile at him, thin, shaky. It didn't reach her eyes, and Liam noticed. He always did. Across the room, her uncle, Victor, leaned back in his leather chair, smirking like a man who'd already counted his share of the inheritance. Even the kid knows she's worthless, he muttered, not even bothering to lower his voice. Elena's stomach twisted as Liam's eyes dropped to the carpet. The others in the room, cousins she hadn't seen in years, a few neighbors who probably came for a slice of the estate, avoided her eyes, but their silence felt just as cruel. They had chosen their side long ago, and it wasn't hers. She led Liam to the only chair not yet taken, at the far end of the long mahogany table, away from the pack, away from the smirks and whispers. The chair creaked as she sat. Liam climbed up beside her, his legs too short for the floor, his hands folded in his lap like he was bracing for impact. Sophia turned slowly, fixing Elena with a smile that looked like pity dipped in poison. "You really shouldn't have come," she said sweetly. "It's not your name in the will. Dad made that very clear." Elena didn't reply. She couldn't. Her throat had gone dry. But deep down, she thought, I shouldn't have come. This was a mistake. And just when she was about to stand and walk out, before they could carve up what was left of her father's memory, like vultures around a carcass, the door creaked open. In walked Mr. Charles Carter, her father's longtime lawyer, silver hair, clean-shaven, suit perfectly pressed. He looked older than she remembered. He clutched a thick leather folder beneath his arm, the weight of it making every eye in the room sit a little straighter. This was it. The moment they had all been waiting for. Elena had come expecting nothing. But what no one knew, not Sophia, not Victor, not even Elena herself, was that her 10-year-old son was carrying something in his backpack that would shatter the smug smiles in this room and rewrite everything they thought they knew. Liam turned to her then, his voice barely above a whisper but filled with quiet certainty. "You forgot the video," he said. "Elena Clark never wanted to come back to this house. Every step through the front door was like peeling off a scab she had worked years to heal. The scent of dust, old books, and lingering cigar smoke hit her like a memory she hadn't given permission to return. It was the same room where her father had once taught her to play chess, and later, where he told her never to come back. The irony? She hadn't even been invited, at least not by anyone who wanted her there. After the funeral, a small, cream-colored envelope had appeared in her mailbox. No return address, no signature. Just the date, time, and a location scribbled in Mr. Carter's clean, practiced handwriting. For a moment, she thought it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to send it to Sophia. Or maybe, like everything else in this family, it was a trap dressed up as tradition. But Liam had wanted to come. "Maybe there's something you need to hear," he said. His voice was soft, but his eyes were steady, the kind of look children aren't supposed to have, like he had seen too much, understood too early. So, she dressed in her old black dress, the one from her mother's funeral, back when she still believed family meant something. Liam had picked out his own shirt and brushed his own hair. He had insisted on looking nice. She braided his that morning, her fingers trembling. He told her she looked beautiful, not knowing she'd barely slept, and had cried quietly in the shower, just hours before. They walked into the lion's den like they were walking into a church, quiet, reverent, hopeful. But what met them was no blessing. It was judgment, cold, immediate, ruthless. Sophia, the golden daughter, the one who never left, never disobeyed, never questioned, sat like a queen presiding over a trial. She had rewritten history so many times, Elena wasn't sure if even she remembered the truth anymore. Victor, her father's older brother and lifelong echo chamber, looked at her like she had tracked mud into his kingdom. She abandoned Henry, they had told everyone. She turned her back on the family. But no one ever asked why she left. No one cared to know that the man they all worshipped had slammed the door in her face the night she showed up with Liam in her arms, bruised from more than just life. No one wanted to hear that she left a marriage that was suffocating her, that she chose survival over shame. To them, Elena Clark had sinned. She had walked away. And in this family, walking away was worse than bleeding out in silence. So, when Mr. Carter began reading the will, it was already over for her. She knew it. Every pause, every sigh, every name but hers. To my daughter Sophia, I leave the primary residence. Sophia didn't blink, but Elena felt her sister's satisfaction like perfume, sweet, thick, overwhelming. To my brother Victor, the lake property and remaining shares of the family business. Victor leaned back, hands behind his head, like a man who had just conquered a continent. To Ethan, my nephew, the vintage car collection. Ethan, the cousin who once locked her out of her bedroom and laughed when she cried. That Ethan. But Elena got nothing. Not a line, not a word, not even her name. Until, finally, there it was. And as previously declared, my daughter Elena will not receive a portion of this estate. Final, sharp, brutal. Like she was being buried a second time, only this time by ink and paper. Victor snorted. Takes a certain kind of woman to walk out on her father, he said, loud enough for the room. Sophia leaned in with mock sympathy. He told me once, you were the greatest disappointment of his life. But I guess you already knew that. Laughter, scoffs, stolen glances. Elena stared down at the table, her breath shallow, hands trembling. Her vision blurred, her cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear. Why did I come? And then something shifted. A quiet sound, a small voice. Not hers, not any of theirs. You forgot the video, Liam said. The room stopped. Silence. Like glass shattering, then nothing. Victor turned. Sophia blinked. Mr. Carter looked up sharply, startled. Even Elena stared at her son in disbelief. What video? She whispered. Liam didn't answer her. Instead, he calmly reached into his backpack, pulled out a small, white envelope, and placed it gently on the table. On the front, Elena Clark. Below that, in sharp capital letters, the unmistakable handwriting of Henry Garcia. For the lawyer only. If it gets ugly. Mr. Carter's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward slowly, carefully, as if the paper might bite. May I? Liam nodded once, silent, steady. The lawyer opened the envelope. Inside was a single USB drive and a folded sheet of paper. He read it. And for the first time in all the years Elena had known him, she saw Mr. Carter's face change. The practiced professionalism cracked for just a second. He looked up, voice quieter now. There is a video message from Mr. Garcia. Time-stamped, authenticated. It was sealed with explicit instructions to be played only if things became contentious. His eyes darted to Sophia, then Victor, then to Elena. The balance in the room had shifted. Suddenly, Elena wasn't the ghost. She was the wildfire. And her son, he had just struck the match. The room had fallen into an unnatural silence. No whispers. No shifting chairs. Not even the scrape of someone clearing their throat. Just the quiet whir of Mr. Carter's laptop fan and the soft click of the USB drive locking into place. The screen lit up. Black background, one word, play. No one moved. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. Her throat ached like it was filled with glass. Liam sat still beside her, his hand folded in his lap, expression unreadable, almost serene. Sophia crossed her arms, her jaw tight. Victor's fingers drummed on the table, slower now. Mr. Carter clicked the spacebar. The screen flickered, static, then clarity. There he was, Henry Garcia, her father, older than she remembered, thinner, frailer. The navy sweater she'd once gifted him hung loose on his frame. His silver hair was swept back, his eyes weary but piercing. He was sitting at the desk she'd sat across from countless times, as a child when he helped her with math homework, as a teen when he scolded her for not being more like Sophia, as a young woman when he told her that walking out of her marriage meant walking out of his life too. Now, here he was again. Only this time, he wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He looked human. He folded his hands on the desk, looked directly into the camera. Then he said two words Elena never thought she'd hear. "Hi, Elena." Her breath caught. The air shifted. "If you're seeing this," he continued, "I'm gone, and I'm guessing things got ugly." He sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I know my family. I know how this room feels. I know the weight they've put on you." A pause. He looked down, then back up. "And I know what I said, what I did, and I was wrong." Sophia flinched. Victor stopped drumming his fingers. Elena's nails bit into the armrests. "I let other people shape my view of you. Sophia told me you'd abandoned the family. Victor said you were selfish, ungrateful, and I believed them." He looked away, his throat moving as he swallowed hard. "I didn't listen. You came to me for help, and I shut the door. You brought me Liam, and I turned away from my own grandson." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes. Her fingers trembled. "But then, I saw something," he said. "One afternoon, Liam came by, just him. We sat for a bit, didn't talk much. But when I asked about you, do you know what he said?" Henry's voice softened. He said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Liam didn't move. She could feel him watching her, but she couldn't look away. Henry's eyes glistened now. "I realized then, I had it all wrong. I thought being strong meant being immovable. But you, Elena, you were strong because you left. You protected your son when no one else would. You chose pain over pretending, and I couldn't see it. I didn't want to see it." Sophia stood abruptly. "This is manipulated, edited," she spat. Mr. Carter raised one hand without taking his eyes off the screen. "Sit down, Ms. Carter." Sophia hesitated, then slowly, reluctantly, sat. Henry continued, "I've changed the will. It won't fix everything I broke, but it's a start. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, they're all going to you and Liam, and I've established a trust fund for Liam's education, because he deserves the future you fought for, and because you deserve peace." A long silence. Then his voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I'm proud of you, Elena. I always was. I just didn't have the courage to say it while I was alive." Elena's tears spilled over. Her body shook with quiet sobs. But she didn't look away, not even for a second. "And if anyone's angry about this," Henry added, his expression hardening ever so slightly, "they can take it up with my ghost." The room collectively exhaled. Then, in a gentler voice, he finished. "Take care of my grandson. Tell him, thank you." The screen went black. No music, no fade. Just darkness. Just stillness. Just truth. No one moved. Victor was frozen. Sophia stared blankly at the screen, her face devoid of color. The cousins, the ones who had once whispered behind Elena's back, sat wide-eyed, pale as paper. And Elena? She sat there, hand over her mouth, tears painting silent paths down her cheeks. Not from grief, but from relief, from being seen. Finally, fully, irrevocably. No one spoke. Not a breath, not a cough, not even a rustle of paper. The video had ended, but its echo still lingered, louder than any scream. Elena sat still, tears quietly drying on her cheeks, hand slowly lowering from her mouth. Her shoulders rose and fell in steady rhythm now, no longer trembling. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking. She was sitting tall. Not because she'd won something, but because the lie that had buried her had finally been burned to the ground. Liam, still holding her hand, looked up at her with calm certainty, as if he had known all along that the truth would rise. Across the table, Sophia broke first. Her chair screeched as she stood too fast. Her fingers were white around the handle of her designer handbag. "This isn't final," she snapped, her voice cracking. This can't be legal. A video? Seriously?" Mr. Carter remained seated, utterly unshaken. "It is legally binding," he said calmly, his voice razor sharp. "The recording is time-stamped, authenticated, witnessed, and your father made it clear that his intentions had changed, permanently." Sophia turned to Victor. "Say something." Victor didn't move. His cigar hung limp from his mouth, unlit. His eyes were locked on the grain of the table, unmoving. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "We buried him, thinking he hated her." He turned to Elena. But he loved you, more than we wanted to believe. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest Victor Garcia would ever get. Sophia scoffed again, this time not even trying to hide the tears in her eyes. She spun toward the door, heels clicking against the wood floor like gunfire. Her husband stumbled after her, muttering something Elena didn't catch. One by one, the others followed. The cousins, the family friends, all those who had whispered behind Elena's back for years, now too ashamed to meet her eyes. Some offered weak nods, acknowledgement, maybe even regret. Others just looked away. Soon, the only ones left were Elena, Liam, and Mr. Carter. The lawyer closed the folder slowly, deliberately, as if sealing the final chapter of a very long book. "There will be paperwork, of course," he said softly now, "but it's all in order." Elena nodded once, her throat still too tight to speak. Carter stood to leave, but paused at the door. He looked back at her, not with pity, but with quiet admiration. "For what it's worth," he said gently, "your father's last act was one of courage. But what you did, surviving it all, raising that boy with grace, that was something far greater." Then he left, and silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of being shut out, dismissed, or erased. This was the silence of peace, of truth finally having spoken loud enough to shatter the years of lies. Elena looked at Liam. He was staring at the now black screen, then at her. She smiled through her tears. "You knew, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. "He told me to keep it safe, just in case." She pulled him close, cradling the back of his head. Her heart swelled with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. She wasn't the daughter who ran away. She was the woman who had survived exile, who had protected her child, who had stood in a room full of ghosts and walked out whole. The house, the inheritance, the trust fund, they were secondary now. What mattered most wasn't in the will, it was in that video, in the words her father had never found the courage to say in life, but had finally spoken in death. "I'm proud of you. I love you." That was the real inheritance. Not money, not land, but dignity and truth. They didn't leave right away. Elena stayed in the room a little longer, letting the silence settle like morning light over everything that had just happened. Her fingers brushed the arm of the chair, tracing the same wood grain she'd stared at moments before, when she thought she was nothing more than a forgotten footnote. But now, the room felt different. Not because the people had changed, but because she had. She looked at Liam, still sitting beside her, small legs swinging, eyes bright and calm. He wasn't just her son. He was her witness, her anchor, and today, her protector. She leaned over and kissed the top of his head. "Thank you," she whispered again. He looked up. "For what?" "For seeing something in him when I couldn't." Liam smiled. "I think he always wanted to say it. He just didn't know how." She nodded slowly, holding those words in her chest like a fragile flame. Maybe that was true. Maybe love doesn't always look the way we expect. Maybe sometimes it arrives late, hidden in an envelope, delivered by the hands of a child who knew how to carry grace. Outside the window, the world hadn't changed. The cars still moved. The clouds still drifted. But inside her, everything had shifted. She stood, not with hesitation, but with clarity. She wasn't the broken daughter. She wasn't the lost one. She was the one who kept going. The one who loved even when love wasn't returned. The one who showed up even when she expected nothing. And the one who, in the end, had been remembered. Truly remembered. As they stepped out of the room together, mother and son, hand in hand, Elena didn't look back. She didn't have to. Because for the first time in years, the door behind her wasn't slammed shut. It had been opened. And through it, she had finally walked. Not in shame, not in defeat, but in quiet, radiant dignity. So, what about you? Have you ever been misunderstood? Cast aside? Labeled as someone you're not? Maybe you're like Elena, doing the right thing quietly, away from the noise. Maybe your strength has gone unseen, your sacrifices unrecognized. But here's the truth. Your worth is not defined by those who fail to see it. Sometimes, justice doesn't come when you ask for it, but when it does, it changes everything. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the room carries the greatest truth. If this story touched you, share it with someone who might need to be reminded, you are not forgotten. And remember, just because someone closes the door doesn't mean it can't be opened again. Sometimes all it takes is a voice brave enough to say, "You forgot something."